Alright, here we are again. Getting ready to drive through the Ocala National Forest. Thought I would take a few moments here just to chat. It is Monday. I think today's the 8th of January 2018. And it looks like the blizzard of 2018 has passed Florida. This is after I went and bought that other sleeping bag to prepare myself to be tucked in. What is it? You guys told me it's snug as a bug. So I got all that stuff ready. And now, today, the temperature will get up into the lower 70s. So, well, at least I have it prepared, ready to go. But I was thinking last week, how cold it was and stuff. And how cold it must be, really, for the people who are homeless. I mean, actually homeless and out on the street. Versus for a van dweller. We have shelter, basically, with us. Those of us that live in the van or have a van equipped for living in. If your heater works, you can run the heater in there to stay warm. You just got to watch out for carbon monoxide. And of course, you can have a real sleeping bed in there with blankets, and in my case, double layered sleeping bags now, and a third sleeping bag to use as a hoodie. That's like luxury. That's like super luxurious compared to a person out on the street trying to survive. And I was thinking a lot about the homeless and how cold it must be for them, and how, hard it would be for them to survive out there unless they can get access to a shelter or get inside Walmart or something, get into a building. Because it was like sub-freezing. It wasn't sub-zero. I think I misspoke on a couple videos saying sub-zero. It wasn't sub-zero. It was like 28, 27 degrees or so out of here. And for northerners, that may be nothing, but for the people in Florida, when it gets below 50 degrees, we pull out mucklucks. Dressed like Eskimos, pretty much. So anything below 50 degrees in Florida, it's like almost snowshoe time. But anyhow, I was thinking about Paul Elkins. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He's a really cool guy who makes a lot of really cool inventions. And one of the things that he has made a bunch of, and he touts it as being like a homeless shelter that you can build from those Coroplast things. But I started thinking about that, and I was like, although what he built was really cool and stuff, it's not really practical for a homeless person. The reason being that, one, finding Coroplast, unless it's election season, it's going to be hard to find it. And even then, you can get in trouble for stealing. But the second bigger issue is, let's say you had all the Coroplast, but if you're homeless, trying to get zip ties or even other things to tie it together and something to cut it into shape and punch holes and assemble everything is actually quite hard. If you have a house and stuff, with access to tools and a warm environment where you can work and money to buy Coroplast, sheets of them, then yeah, something like that can be constructed. But if you're actually out on the street homeless, it is something very difficult to do. So maybe if you were going to build something like that, you'd have to do it before you become homeless. Okay, and then take your shelter somewhere and hide it, and then go into it for a living. The big problem is this. If you're homeless and you're in a city and you have one of those shelters, the city officials will confiscate it, impound it or whatever, and take it away from you. Probably put you into a shelter or something. So, I'm not really sure about the practicality of making something like that. If you had to buy the Coroplast and all the parts and whatnot, I think it costs you well over $20, $30. And for that price, I think you can buy a 2-man tent from Walmart. So, and you don't have to put it together, and it packs down and you can hide it. You can carry it even if you're a homeless person in a backpack or something. So looking at it from that perspective, I think a tent would be more useful than trying to build a shelter out of Coroplast. So although the effort, you know, to look into the homeless situation and providing shelter for them is commendable, I don't think it's practical. It is cool though. Yeah, he built it like a little tiny house almost. But I think a tent would be better, just for a lot of reasons. Main one being easier to move around with it. If you had one of those Coroplast things, I think they're like 7 feet long or whatever, 6.5, 7 feet long, to accommodate a grown man, you know. You can't really lug that thing around. People spot you, but if you have a tent, you can carry that around with a backpack. It's gonna be a lot easier to drag it through the woods or whatever to hide out there, you know, if you need a place to camp up, set up camp. But the other issue that I was thinking, for like city homeless people who, you know, don't have access to woods and stuff like here, as we're driving through the Ocala National Forest, if you didn't have access, oh, you got bears here to watch out for too. So if you're homeless out here living in the forest, there is that. But anyhow, what I was thinking would actually be more suitable shelter, emergency shelter for homelessness, isn't so much building a little tiny home out of Coroplast, but modifying a sleeping bag. Yeah. Because a sleeping bag could easily be rolled up and carried around with you or hidden somewhere until you could get access to it later. So you could set up your sleeping quarters, sleep, then get up the next day, roll it up, and carry it with you or hide it somewhere. You wouldn't be stuck with that big Coroplast building that the police will easily spot. And even other people who aren't the police, because they'll call the police on you. Now, if you were to take the sleeping bag and modify it, maybe like put a little hole in it somehow that can be zipped up for your head to come out of it, and put little armholes, maybe even with sleeves. That sleeping bag could double as a winter jacket. That to me seems like it might be a better homeless shelter solution. You could take the sleeping bag, you know, fold it on itself somehow, so it's not like a big long 6-foot bag. You look like Gumbo if all you did was poke a hole in it and put your head out, and especially if it was green. Walk around, you know, as a sleeping bag upright with your head sticking out, you'd probably look like Gumbo. For those of you who don't know Gumbo, you might want to look it up. I think it's Gumbo. Was it Gumbo? I don't even know Gumbo for real. I never saw the real show. I only saw it on the Saturday Night Live skits back in the 80s, I think. They did Mr. Bill and Gumbo and all those other little clips. But anyhow, I think that's a viable solution. And I think I recall seeing somebody doing something like that, but they built like a complete suit out of it. So that to me seems like it's a better solution. And even though someone did come up with that suit, I think they're kind of expensive and not everybody would have access to it. So, you know, if you're a person who's about to lose their home and whatnot, I think given a choice between spending money on Coroplast and zip ties and scissors, to, you know, or razor blades to try to build a house, or getting a sleeping bag from Walmart, modifying it, I think the Walmart sleeping bag might win hands down. It's a lot more portable, and if you do it right, you may be able to modify that sleeping bag so that it becomes a jacket. So if I had to do it and I had my choice, I would probably try to pick up, you know, the Sub-Zero sleeping bag and use that, because that'll ensure that you can stay warm in it. It might be worth looking into. I don't know. You know, the other thing is to just use that material and make a suit and sleep in it. A winter suit, but then you kind of look like, you know, you're walking around in a, what, like the Michelin Man? A little tire, all big and puffy. So I don't know if that would work so well either. But what I might do is actually look at one of my sleeping bags here. Maybe do an experiment with a cheap $8.97 Walmart sleeping bag to see what it could be done with it. Because I think even if you're homeless, you know, with nothing, no pennies to your name, you might be able to get a sleeping bag from one of the shelters or something, or from donation center, or even if you stood around, I guess, begging on a street corner, I think you could possibly make $20, you know, in a day. That would be enough to buy one of those sleeping bags. So having a nylon sleeping bag like that, I think would be really useful, because it would be waterproof to an extent. You keep the rain off you and keep you warm inside. You'd have to get one that's waterproof. And maybe to help it even more, get some of that waterproofing spray that they can spray on things, and spray that on the outside of it to just make it more durable for repelling water. But I think that to me would be the ultimate survival gear. You know, getting one of those sleeping bags and converting it into, I mean, even if you didn't convert it, you have a sleeping bag that'll keep you from freezing at night. But it also keeps the bugs from eating you if you can seal it up so that bugs can't get in. Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys ever watch like the survival shows. You know, the it's kind of funny because they usually let they cheat, like even Naked and Afraid. I don't know if you saw that. I saw it at Planet Fitness the other day. And I'm like, wow, these people are like wussies. They're allowed to bring like survival gear, you know, like each person is allowed to bring one, and they bring like a fire starter, like a little bowl, and you know, and a string. I'm like, why don't you just bring cigarette lighters? And if you can't do that, just bring one of those flint thingies that you can hit, you know, and create a spark. Because one of the biggest issues I've seen them do or have problems with is getting a fire going. The other thing that I see them have problems with that I think is stupid is, you know, they all get eaten by bugs. So if I had to do something like that show, if I had to be Naked and Afraid, and I was allowed to bring one thing, the first thing I would want to make sure I had is a decent knife, you know, like a machete type knife. And I saw a girl, you bring a custom-made one that she made, and if I was allowed to do that, I'd custom make one and put one of those flint starter, fire starter things in the handle or something. And also wrap it up with paracord for tying things. Then you know, the other thing that I would get, my second choice would be something that can be used as shelter easily, because half those people, I think not half, most of them, pretty much all of them, suffer the first couple nights sleeping out in the open, essentially. They try to build their little shelters, but they're terrible. You know, bugs eat them and all that other stuff. They get eaten by bugs. I'm like, wow, if you're allowed to bring one piece of survival gear, maybe the best survival gear to get, maybe even beating the knife, depending on where they drop you off. I might even go without a knife, as long as they had rocks. You know, if they had sharp rocks, I could make an axe or a knife out of it. Maybe the best gear to get would be a tent, or, you know, if they allowed a tent, but I don't think they allow that. But if they allowed like a sleeping bag, heck yeah. Get one of those sleeping bags that can seal up. And even if it didn't seal up, I'd seal it up while I was sleeping. Because that would keep the bugs from eating you, and it would keep you nice and warm. So, I don't know what their rules are exactly, because I've seen them bring stuff. Like, I saw one guy bring duct tape. So if he can bring duct tape, and some other girl brought netting, you know, they brought like mosquito netting, and they made little clothing out of it. I'm like, okay. they can do that. Well, heck, I would bring like tarp, or I would bring, you know, if you could bring one thing, I would bring a sleeping bag. If they didn't give me a sleeping bag, I would bring tarp. And with the tarp, you can actually make a tent or sleeping bag. You know, so to me, that seems like a better option than what they were doing. I mean, if you brought like a big piece of tarp, you could fold it in on itself, kind of like a burrito, and sleep in it. Now, you might have to leave the opening up for your head to breathe out, you know, so bugs might get in through there still, but at least you're mostly covered. So, I don't know. Anyhow, I'm rambling on and on, so I figure I better go ahead and end this video, because it's getting quite a bit long, and uploading it might be hard on the field here, as I'm out in the middle of my work location. Internet has been very sparse and sporadic access, so I'm probably going to go ahead and finish this up and try to upload it when I get back to Walter's house, you know, and have access to Wi-Fi internet. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you are all managing to stay warm. With any luck, this heat wave coming through Florida right now will continue. Although it was going to be kind of interesting for me to see how the double layered work